What's up, you guys? Justin Rivas here. Just want to talk to you about these 10 Panasonic lenses. That's right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them that are kind of representing the entire Panasonic range. Now, Panasonic has 27 lenses, so it's not all of them, but this is kind of a great variety of lenses that are going to help you figure out what kind of lenses you might need for what kind of jobs. And they represent everything from the cheapest Panasonic lenses to maybe not the most expensive, but a couple of the most expensive lenses that they have, and kind of a little bit of everything in between. And they have lots of versatilities. These are all kind of used for different reasons. I'm going to be talking primarily about video, but photography is important as well. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see me using a variety of these lenses for a variety of reasons. And it's really, really exciting to have all of these. Panasonic just sent me 3 more of these. I'm borrowing 1, and 6 of them are mine. So I've had lots of time with a variety of these lenses. Some of them are new to me, but we're going to kind of talk about, I think, 4 key areas, maybe 5. Yeah, 5. We'll say their zoom range, like how far in do they zoom or how wide do they get. We're going to talk about their aperture, which is how much light they let in and how much they blur that background away from the subject you're shooting. We're going to talk about price, we're going to talk about weight, and we're going to talk about if they have optical image stabilization or not. And so that's kind of the range, just so you know what we're dealing with. We've got 45 to 150, f4 to 5.6. We've got the 35 to 100, f2.8. We've got the 12 to 60, 3.5 to 5.6, a 42.5, 1.7. 14 to 42, 3.5 to 5.6. We've got a 12 to 35, 2.8. We've got a 25, 1.7. We've got a 7 to 14 f4. We've got a 14 millimeter f2.5, and we have the 12 millimeter 1.4. This thing is a beast. We'll get to that one, but let's start long and we'll work our way down to short, I guess. So, I mean, obviously one of the big benefits of the Micro Four Thirds platform is how light things are. Now, this GH3 is probably the heaviest camera you can get. Maybe a GH4 is a little bit more, but like the G7 that's recording there, as well as like a GX8, or many of them are so light, and so weight is important. And so this is kind of your cheap long zoom. The 45 to 150 weighs at 210 grams or 7.4 ounces, so it's pretty light. It's also, in Canadian dollars, $379.99. So we're going to be talking Canadian dollars because that's where I live. Saskatchewan, greatest province on the planet. Anyway, this is like kind of your standard entry-level zoom. Now, I use this in a vlog that I'll throw up on the screen somewhere when I was at a football game and wanted to zoom in really, really far, and didn't cost me a whole lot of money. It was before I bought this beast, which is the 35 to 100 2.8. This is a professional video lens, whereas this is more entry level, but I was actually surprised at how good the quality is. Now, it only has the Mega OIS, which is the cheaper optical image stabilization, but even then it can be pretty solid. So let's have a look here. We're going to flip here. Now, I'll zoom far away. I've got a WD-40 can here. Let's try and lock on focus there. Focus is pretty quick. All right, so it focuses pretty quick, and again, pretty solid where I'm trying to hold it steady here. But that's like a good chunk of zoom range here, where when I get into some of these lenses, you'll see that that's about like 12 feet away. And so that's going to give you a good standard zoom range for a fairly inexpensive lens. And so that's nice. And if you're starting out, that's totally fine. I found though, like when you're panning with it with the image stabilization on, it can start to look a little bit choppy, as that's trying to sort out whether you're just shaking or you're panning. But as a great way to get in, 45 to 150, not bad at all. Let's get into the next one, which is the 35 to 100. This guy comes in at $14.99 Canadian, basically $1,500. It is the heaviest lens of all of these at 360 grams or 12.7 ounces, but that's still only 3/4 of a pound. It's got this giant flower hood, which we're not going to throw on. Maybe we will. Sure, let's throw it on. And this is a professional zoom lens. It's a 2.8 aperture, which means it's letting in a lot more light. Also, the aperture doesn't change as you're zooming in and out, so the camera doesn't have to like work or calculate as hard if you're in like a more automatic mode, or you're not having to adjust if you're in manual, which is really nice. And you're going to see here, as we put it on this Diet Coke here, how much brighter the picture is. It's actually kind of almost blowing out a little, so I'm going to dial down that ISO. And yeah, and you'll see just kind of how blurry that background is. And especially as I zoom in here and it acquires focus, it's struggling, really struggling, really struggling. Oh, we're too close. That's why. All right, there we go. It's just how nice and blurry those boosted boards are in the background there. Let's just see it. It's just going to pull the focus to the boosted boards. There we go, and it's got it. And just kind of that zoom range, again, we're going to come up to the W4. This has the Power OIS, which is much more stable than the Mega OIS, and if I stop talking here, you'll see that it's pretty darn rock solid. Anyway, this lens is fairly new to me, but I really, really like it. Now, this is an expensive professional video lens. I bought it actually more for the photography side. I'm shooting a lot of like concert and shows where the lighting isn't always as good, and that 2.8 really helps, you know, letting in a bunch of that light, as well as kind of separating the performer from the background and what else is going on. So I really, really like that lens. Again, kind of heavy, but if you're looking for kind of the longer zoom that's going to let in the most amount of light possible, this is the best lens to have. Now here's one of the lenses that Panasonic sent to me that I'm actually really excited to try out for vlogging, and this is a 12 to 60. Now it is 3.5 to 5.6, so it doesn't let in, you know, as much light as, you know, that 35 to 100, but being able to go all the way from 12, which is really quite wide, to being able to zoom into 60 makes it what I think might be the most versatile all-around vlogging lens. Now there is a 14 to 140 or something crazy like that. I think that lens would end up hunting a lot as it has to go through that giant zoom range. And typically for vlogging, you don't need that much zoom. And so I'm really excited about, you know, putting this through its paces and being able to give this a shot. It's fairly light, 210 grams, 7.4 ounces. Now it retails for $7.99 Canadian, which is a lot of money. I'm sure you can find it for cheaper. And like they're going to start bundling this. I know the new G85, which I'm really excited for, is going to have this lens with it. And so it'll basically be a fairly inexpensive kit lens, but you know, it's a pretty cool lens. Now let's just try this out here. So we're going to hit the record button here. You're going to see it's going to get, see how much darker that gets as we zoom in? And that's just as it rolls from a 3.5 to a 5.6. But, you know, it's kind of an interesting range, again, where we're able to go from that. Let's crank up the ISO here and go to these boosted boards. And the WD-40 can's obviously a little ways away, but look how much of the room we can see here as we do this. And this has the Power OIS, which again is the better version of the image stabilization. And you can see here just how solid that looks at 12 as I'm moving around, that it's really, really steady. And again, we can kind of do a good zoom in there. So for storytelling, I think that this lens is going to be fantastic. I'm going to put it through its paces and try it out, but this is a really exciting lens. Now, you're probably not going to spend $800 on this lens because, well, maybe you would. Maybe you would, but I don't know if I would spend $800 on it. But as far as a kit lens, I think is going to be absolutely fantastic because there's some other lenses that are close in that price range that I think maybe could be a little bit better. But anyway, again, super excited to try out that lens. Let's try this next one. This is my favorite lens for taking pictures of people, but it's also really cool for video. This is a 42.5, 1.7. It lets in a ton of light. It is tiny. It is super, super light. What do they say? 130 grams. It has the Power OIS, so it's got really strong image stabilization. It says $550, but you can typically catch a sale on it. I think I paid $450 for it, and it's just such a fantastic little lens. Let's just look here. I'm going to hit the record button. You're going to see how bright this is because of how much light it's letting in. We're going to dial this all the way down to 250. Now we're going to have to back up here to be able to, oh yeah, I've got a manual focus. Let's get in close here. Oh yeah, we can get it nice and close. Now just look at how blurry that background is. Like those boosted boards are completely out. And this lens is amazing for interviews, for isolating subjects, for shooting B-roll where you're just really wanting to showcase something and just blur everything else out. And it's so light, it's so fantastic. It takes such amazing pictures of people. And now, you know, it's a prime, meaning it doesn't zoom at all. So you got to kind of zoom with your feet. But even that Power OIS, look how stable that is. Oh, it's just magical. Anyway, I really, really like this lens. It's great for taking pictures of people, interviewing people. It's kind of your main people lens. And then the odd thing of B-roll. And as well as it's so good in like dark situations because of, you know, how wide open that aperture is. So really exciting, fun lens. Definitely one that I recommend for having in your arsenal for being able to do all sorts of cool things with it. So 42.5. Really nice lens. Really, really nice. Okay, let's set that down, working our way through. 14 to 42. This is the kit lens that came with the G7. And, you know, as far as an all-rounder, it's not bad at all. I did vlogs, a bunch of them I'll throw up on the screen somewhere, with this lens, and it totally worked. And even recently I pulled it out again just for fun. Now, it is, you know, going to be a darker lens here. So we're going to have to dial up the ISO here, but we're still within a reasonable range here. ISO, well, we'll put it at 1600. As we zoom in, that's going to get darker. But it just kind of covers your standard zoom range. And for starting out, this is a fine lens for video. It has the Mega OIS, so it's going to stabilize your video. Retail $379.99, but it's basically included with the cameras. I don't know that you would just buy this if you needed another lens, unless there was something wrong with your current lens. And if that's your case, then you know it's going to work fine. Mega OIS, just get you started in video. I'm not going to say a whole lot more. We'll just cover this kind of zoom range here. As you can see here, that we can get into WD-40. Focusing I found to be reasonable on it as we zoom out here. And how close can we get in here? Let's try and kind of macro mode. That's actually one of the things where it's pretty good at getting the details there. And look how solid this is. Pretty stable. I'm using my elbows to stabilize on there. Anyway, all around, not a bad lens. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because it's just kind of standard. And for most people, they either have it or they don't have it. And you're probably, yeah, there's probably other lenses you would buy before you bought this. Let's talk about my favorite B-roll shooter, meaning this is my favorite one for shooting, well, pretty much anything. I think if you only ever had one lens on your camera, this is probably the one you want. And this is the 12-35 f2.8. It's not inexpensive at $1199.99, but it's got the power optical image stabilization. It's fairly hefty. What do they say on it? It is 305 grams or 10.8 ounces. Again, that's not a lot of weight, but for these, you know, it's definitely solid. I can tell you this thing's built like a tank. I wiped out on a boosted board episode 24 while having this thing. It has been completely fine since, and it, you know, took a pretty big hit on the pavement. But that constant 2.8 aperture means it's going to work really well in low light. I find the colors on this thing are just fantastic. I did so many vlogs with this. I'll throw up on the screen somewhere if you want to see more shots from that. Especially the recent Instameet one was fantastic, where I have this shot of bees and flowers. You can just kind of see how good that looks. But I really, really love this lens. Let's hit record here. We're just going to zoom in, and oh, we got to dial this down. 2.8. Again, we got lots of light here. We're actually blowing out a little bit. And power OIS, so it's really, really solid for when you're hand holding. And, you know, kind of that zoom range. Now, it's not a ton of zoom range, you know, but we can go from, like, you know, again, nice and wide, really, really wide, to, you know, zooming in and grabbing little bits of those details. Not as much as, like, this 12-60, you know, at $799, I mean, this is only $400 more. This is a professional grade lens, but you still get the power OIS in this, which is nice. And you're, instead of 35 millimeters, you're going to 60, so you're getting a good chunk more zoom range while just giving up some of that light. So I shouldn't say that maybe you wouldn't buy this. As I think about it, as an all-arounder, this is a really, really nice lens, but if pro video is where you're at, you need to have this in your bag. My friend she shoots a lot of video, this is the one lens that she keeps on her camera all the time, and her stuff is really, really, really good, and she's just using one lens. You probably don't need 10. If you can't make this work, other than maybe really long zooming situations, this should be able to cover pretty much everything. And even for vlogging, other than I like having a little bit more width, so the 7-14 I use, otherwise, sometimes I'm struggling between deciding which one I want to use all the time, but I'm typically using this just to show a little bit more of the world. But I love this lens, absolutely love this lens. It's borrowed. I need to buy my own because I have to give it back here right away. But I'm really, really excited about this lens. It's one of the best lenses out there. All right, moving down the chain here. Okay, so next up we have the 25mm 1.7. This is the first lens you should buy after your kit lens. Unless you have a pile of money, then, you know, maybe a 12-35 or some of these other options. But this is the kind of like 50mm equivalent on a full frame, the nifty 50 that they call it. And I have another video recommending that your 50mm prime is the first lens you buy. This is going to allow you to take good pictures of people where you can really separate them from the background because of that 1.7 aperture, as well as get you into low light situations like inside a house, or taking pictures of your kids, or taking video of kids, or anytime you step indoors. We're going to dial this down. Let's hit record here. And you're going to see how much light this thing is able to let in. Where some of those other lenses were at like ISO 1600, this is ISO 400 right now. Now, it doesn't have image stabilization, but it's relatively inexpensive at $299. Now, you can get it on sale for much cheaper. I think I was like $225, again, Canadian. It's going to be even cheaper in other places of the world. But look at how we can just kind of blow out the background here, meaning blur out everything else that's behind it. And so, you know, if you're shooting a shot of this, you know, can of, or this bottle of Diet Coke, you know, everything else kind of separates away from it. And that's really, really nice to do, especially like taking, again, pictures of people. The only thing is you have to be more stable with this lens because there's no image stabilization, so it can get a little bit shaky. Again, for just kind of reference on field of view, that WD-40 bottle's pretty small, so you'd have to zoom with your feet. Like, you'd have to, you know, kind of move over there. But as far as shooting all the little details around, this lens actually works well. You just have to plant yourself, be stable, or grab a tripod. But as far as if you're into pictures and photography, I think this is the first lens you should buy. Even if you just bought the cheapest Panasonic out there, this is going to allow you to really start to take artistic, fun, cool photos. And so I really like having this 25mm in my bag. I don't maybe always pull it out when I've got something like the 12 to 35, but not everybody has that kind of money to, you know, drop on the lens. So again, cool lens, inexpensive, super light. What does this thing weigh? 125 grams, like 4.5 ounces, like nothing. And so it really isn't adding a lot of weight to your camera, which is cool. Step down to my main vlogging lens, the 7 to 14. This is not an inexpensive lens. This is $1,500 Canadian. I bought it used from a different city for $750, so that was much cheaper, and it's built like a tank, so I wouldn't worry about buying something used. It is like a super bubble, and I don't know if you'll be able to see that there. Anyway, this is a hefty lens, one of the heavier ones. What do they say? 300 grams, 10.5 ounces. Like, it's a solid piece of glass. This is a 14mm equivalent on a full frame. Like, that is crazy stupid wide. Let's dial this up here, and you'll see like how much of the room we're able to get into, and even how the edges start to like almost distort a little. Let's dial up the brightness there. Constant f4, so as you zoom in and out, it's not going to change how bright or how hard your camera's working, so that's pretty cool. 7 to 14 isn't a really big range, but here, I'll just like turn this on myself, and I'll flip out the screen here so I can see what I'm doing. But you see how, like, when I hold this out, like, how much of the room you're able to see with this. And that is really cool for when I'm talking, explaining things there. Or even when you turn it this way, it can be kind of fun, because what you're able to do is, like, talk with your hands, and, like, your hands come out here, which, you know, is pretty exciting and fun to be able to do. So, yeah, this is my main vlogging lens, just for how much stuff I can fit into the frame. It can be a challenge, because let's do our like Diet Coke test here, which we're going to need to make this a little brighter. Let's dial this up somewhere around there. And like you can see here that, like, I mean, you can get close, but the background isn't all that blurry. And if we try and hit that WD-40 bottle, well, good luck. Like, we are so far away from that right now. But again, you're kind of trading that off for being able to go like the stupid wide angle. So I love stupid wide. It works really, really well. What I'm excited for is some of the new, like the new G85, like my main vlogging camera is a G7. It doesn't have in-body image stabilization, and this doesn't have image stabilization, which is kind of sad, but there's reasons for that and how much glass they're trying to fit into such a compact package. But the new G85 has in-body image stabilization, so being able to stabilize this image will be cool. When you're that wide, you don't notice shake as much as when you're zoomed in, but again, really fun, wide, interesting lens. And I've got a lot of vlogs which you can check out this lens in action, probably the last like 30 or 40. So check those out if you're interested in that lens and seeing some real world examples. Let's go to another lens that I'm actually really pumped about that Panasonic just sent me. This is a 14mm prime. Do you see how tiny this thing is? It is less than 100 grams. What's that in ounces? Less than, no. Yeah, 55 grams, less than 2 ounces. It's basically non-existent, and this is a 14mm 2.5. So it actually does pretty good at letting in light. It's just like a tiny little pancake lens. Let's dial this up here. And you can see it lets in a good chunk of the world around it. No image stabilization, so you're going to have to be a little bit steady with it. But again, at this kind of width, you don't like necessarily notice that. Let's get in on our Coke bottle. I've never tried this out, so we'll see how close we need to get to achieve focus, basically somewhere right around here. Now again, you have no ability to zoom with this lens, so that could be a problem, but it's really cheap. What is this thing listed at? For $449, which I guess maybe isn't stupid cheap, but that's almost the cheapest lens that they make. It weighs nothing. It has a 2.5 aperture, so it's going to be better in lower light than, you know, anything like your, you know, kit lens. That's, you know, almost a full stop. You know, I think maybe 2/3 of a stop of extra light that you're going to be able to put in there. again, such a crazy compact package, like hardly anything to it. And if you don't need to be zooming in and out, maybe you talk mostly to the camera or the low light and you're on a budget, this is a really interesting lens. So I'm interested to actually try this out for vlogging, see how we do. We can obviously fit ourselves in this, I'm assuming. Let me just flip out the screen here. Oh yeah, oh, I'm way too bright. Yeah, dial that down because we're so good in low light. Look at that. That actually looks pretty good. And the background's kind of blurring out there. I think this could be, yeah, really interesting lens to try. You can also get an adapter on this to make it an 11 millimeter lens equivalent, and that would be interesting to try. I requested one, they didn't send it. I may go buy my own to make that a part of the test. So there we go, 14 millimeter. All right, maybe the last one, and some of you I bet are watching just to see me talk about this lens. This just came out. It is a 12 millimeter f1.4. Now, just for fun, let's look at this. 14 millimeter 2.5, 12 millimeter 1.4. There is so much more glass on this lens. And I am so excited to try this out. This thing is built like a tank, and it better be for $1,800 Canadian. Not inexpensive at all, but it's got a huge front glass element because it's just sucking in so much light. This is metal, and this is the only one of these where it is metal, but this thing is just built so solidly. There is a 42.5 Nocticron 1.2 that is kind of built similar to this, but this is a Summilux 1.4 12 millimeter lens, Leica. This is going to be an amazing, amazing piece of glass in the way of how much light it can let in and how it can kind of blur that background out. Let's flip this guy on. It's letting in so much light. We have to dial this down. We're all the way down to ISO 200. Let's just kind of zoom in here. And it's tough for a 12 millimeter lens to blur the background like this thing can do. Oh, we're not even all the way down. 1.4, there we go. And just everything is just completely falling away. But we've still got this like huge field of view here. I'm going to try and lock on here. There we go. It's got lock. And so this is like the ultimate low light vlogging lens. I'm going to turn around myself and it's going to be probably so bright it won't even be able to like handle, because I'll need to get an ND filter to turn down even more, bump up the shutter speed, which is, I guess, completely possible. But man, that picture just looks stunning. Absolutely stunning. So yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun to try out. So I'm going to be doing some vlogging with this lens. Again, $1,800, no image stabilization. Again, a lot of glass, and so picking up a body that has it will be even more fun once I get that G85. But it is a, there's just no description for it. It is stinking heavy though. 335 grams, 11.8 ounces. Again, nothing if you're comparing to like full frame glass, which I've had before, but as you hold it, you feel the heft. Now this one's similar, which is my typical vlogging lens, but it's a little bit lighter. And yeah, but I just can't wait. I can't wait. Oh, just look at that. Oh, it's so good. Again, WD-40 bottle is going to be so far away. Just look at like how the Coke bottle just like blurs out in the foreground. Anyway, really, really excited about that lens. And there you go. That is kind of the full range. Again, there are more lenses that do more things, and maybe even some popular ones that I was missing, but this is kind of a good breadth. But this is just a conversation starter. Comments, please, about any sort of questions you may have regarding any of these lenses. If you're using some of these lenses, let us know how you are using them, what you think of them. If there's somewhere you're thinking about getting, you have a specific question related to something, please let me know. But this is like a good chunk of the range, and if you're starting for video, I guarantee you one of these lenses would work for something that you want. Now, there's always trade-offs, and there's always different things to do, but taking advantage of how light and small the Panasonic glass is hugely important for Micro Four Thirds. And yes, you can get adapters and put other big pieces of glass on and get like speed boosters, but I love the run and gun nature of Micro Four Thirds and how compact as well as how high quality this glass is. Really, really cool. So there you go. 10 lenses. Start your questions. Let's get the conversation rolling. I'm going to be trialing much more of these in depth, as well as check the comments, because I'm going to list out some of the other videos where I've used these lenses, if I have used them, as well as if you're a photography person, check out my Instagram page and you'll start to see some photos. I already have a number of them with some of these lenses. You can see the hashtags to see which ones I'm using and which of those, but there's going to be even more coming. Anyway, I think that's it for me. I'm Justin Rivas. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, comment, helps me out immensely. Thanks, you guys. Have a great night.